Testing, 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 testing. Testing, 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 testing.
All right, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the October 15th, 2020 meeting of the Airport Advisory Commission to order. We're going to forego a roll call. Let the record reflect that all of the members of the Airport Advisory Commission are present. So with that, I'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Commissioner Burris to approve the agenda. Do I have a second? I have a second by Commissioner Call to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion or debate on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, 5-0. Approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes. It's okay. From the minutes from the Thursday, September 17th meeting. Whew, you're getting me confused. I have a motion by Commissioner Armstrong, and I have a second by Commissioner Burris to approve the minutes from our September 17th meeting. Any discussion or debate on that? Give everybody a couple minutes. Okay, and I'll ask for a voice vote. A yes or aye approves the minutes as presented. A no or nay rejects them. All those in favor of the minutes as presented signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, hearing none, 5-0. Next up, item number 5, Mr. Stark.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. We'll start with the monthly report. Air Service, as you guys, I'm sure, have been waiting for some news from that. I wish I had more news for you. The short answer is that there's not really any news at this point other than we do still have Air Service through November. We've all been waiting with bated breath for Congress to act, and as we all know, they have not acted to provide any support for the airlines. So the local piece of that is that we have not been contacted by American Airlines at this time for any negotiations to continue. So we're really on hold. And my guess is the way things are going, we won't see anything in terms of support from the federal government till after the election. Our passenger enplanements are still running low, about 50% of what September was for 2019. Again, same reasons, COVID. It's down a bit over August, as I mentioned last month, because they went to 1 flight per day instead of 2. They've come back to that for October, so I would expect to see the October numbers come back up again. Hopefully, it was 65 if you remember in August, so I'm hoping to see more than that number for October. It's looking good in the parking lot. It's looking good in the terminal. We see people moving around, so we hope we're still in a recovery mode. And as long as American doesn't cut us off, then we should continue that. Flight operations. The last couple of months have been slow, still due, I think, in general to the governor's continued travel restrictions, which got reiterated again Tuesday. Is that right? Yeah.
And we're going to get more today.
Yeah. So
stand by.
Yeah. If you don't like what it is today, hang on. It'll change. It won't take long. But our numbers for September operationally were 47% of what they were for September 2019. So we're still down. Not really seeing a recovery in that. The overflow parking, all of these airliners that were coming in, I've been super busy and have not had time to compute an exact number, but the last I knew we were at 486 as of about a week ago. And there's been airplanes coming in every day, not 30 a day, but 1 or 2 here and there. and I'm very confident we're over 500 as of today. I'll have a better number later, but we do still expect to see some more coming in probably until we fill up, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But our revenue for that parking is 350% of what it was for September 2019, so still running about $155,000 a month. Landing fees are also up, but that's again the same as it was last month. It's due not to having a lot of extra airplanes, but because these airplanes are larger. So that number's running about 278% of September for 2019. At this point, the only active projects going on at the Air Center are still the water towers. Update on that: the East Water Tower should be finishing up paint tomorrow if they're on schedule. It looked like they were yesterday. They got all the white on and were out there working their butts off. I talked to the contractor yesterday as he was getting on an airplane to go back to Dallas, and he said they're on schedule. So tomorrow they should be finishing up the East Tower and moving Monday over to the West Tower to start painting on it. Personnel, we have welcomed Mr. Ned Karavdik to our ranks in the office as our airport security coordinator. He started on October 2nd and is doing a great job, learning really quickly. Got a long way to go. There's a lot to learn, a lot to do, but I'm grateful to have him there. He's taken some of the load off of Lorena and Scott and myself, so in the end he'll take all of that security load off of us. There's also an opening for the Air Center Property and Contracts Coordinator that is on the city website at this time if anybody's interested. Or you know anybody's interested.
There you go.
So that's it.
You had mentioned about the new outfit that's coming in for the parking planes.
That we heard this morning, or
Yeah.
that you did, yeah. So, yeah, last week I noticed that Icelandic Air was retiring all of their 757s. You said there was 4 of them? Three coming today. So that was something we didn't know. Mayor saw it yesterday, and we didn't know they were coming here. I wondered if they might be, but had not heard anything. And so I don't know who's going to be handling those, but they're on their way here now.
I think to me, one of the things about that is it's kind of like the Air New Zealand thing. These are international airlines that could literally go anywhere in the world if they wanted to store their planes. And the fact that they've chosen to come to Roswell, I think, speaks highly of the operations we got here.
I think it does. I think it really does. And I didn't mention that the Copa Airlines have continued to arrive 737s. A couple, 2 or 3 a week. We still expect to get probably the 30 that we talked about initially. I talked to Kava about that yesterday, and we're on track for that. That all looks good. The first Air New Zealand 777 came in yesterday at about 7:30, so it's here.
Oh, wow.
And we're expecting 7, 8 of those. Leases, we don't have anybody new at this time. Talking to Jen Air about their lease for their teardown pad. We may wind up with something going on to legal this month. Once I finish up with them, maybe this afternoon. We do have a number of renewals. We've got Richardson in Hangar 91, Richardson and Stevens, and Carlton Walker in the T hangars, Tom Wadsworth in the T hangars, Kent Goodman, some storage over in the Longhorn area. Alien City Drag Strip and Jen Air for their office in Building 733 are all going to be on legal next week.
Okay.
And I believe that's all I have for now. Questions?
Any questions on stuff? Commissioner Kunkel.
You said that we were good with American until the end of November?
Till the end of November is what they have on the schedule right now and have committed to.
Okay, I guess I just misunderstood. I thought that we had some sort of agreement with them that would go through March of next year.
No, they got a loan, and I guess that's probably worth updating too, since we
Sure.
forgot about that information, but they got a loan from DOT for $5.8 billion to support them. And what we were thinking when we originally looked through that information is that there were stipulations on there that would stop them from canceling routes through March, but that is not the case. And that was information we got last week. I apologize for getting to mention that. But so we're still somewhat in limbo with them. There's nothing to stop them from canceling any routes. And if you followed anything at all on the internet that Doug Parker's been putting out, he's talking about canceling other small cities, not just those 15 initial ones, but he's beginning to formulate a plan for others. So no one's out of the woods at this point.
Okay. Other questions? So you really hit on the air service, which was item 7. So you basically did 5 and 7. You want to go ahead and go back and finish up 6?
Yeah, I pretty much hit everything there was for 7. 6, there's not a lot of information there. We were supposed to have gone before the committee last month, and we've been in contact with EDA, and because of COVID complications, they canceled last month's committee meeting. I still don't have a date for when this one is supposed to happen, but sometime before the end of the month is what we have heard. We had a little bit more updating some of the paperwork to do. That's in the process. Doesn't look like it's a problem for us at all. We're just staying in touch with EDA, and there's really no news at this point.
Okie doke. Move on to item number 8, Armstrong Services. Brought the whole team. Need more chairs?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see everybody. Mike Garcia with Armstrong Consultants. And with me today, I brought some of our planners. I know you folks get to see myself and Tim and Jackie on the engineering side of the house. I thought this would be a good time for you to meet our planning group. The planners do a lot of behind the scene things. They do a lot of work directly with Scott and his staff and City Hall. So with me today I have Justin Peets, who's a senior planner and principal. To my right I have Dennis Corsi. He's the actual president of Armstrong Consultants, planner and pilot. I apologize, Justin, you're a pilot. And also a planner is Brooke Barber. So with that, we have the mayor wanted us to kind of tell you folks and who we are and what we do. And so with that, we thought we'd put together a little PowerPoint presentation. And with that, you guys hear from me all the time, so I'm going to turn it over, let others talk and meet you folks.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. It is so good to be here on a beautiful day. And we thought maybe we could pull back the curtain a little bit on Armstrong Consultants, tell you a little bit about who we are and more about what we do and how the relationship works contractually with Armstrong and the city and how we deliver the services that we deliver to you. Armstrong Consultants has been in business since 1973. We've been specializing exclusively in airports since 1985. Our services include airport engineering, planning, and construction administration services as our core services. We have 47 employees specializing exclusively in airports, which is really as large as the aviation divisions in a lot of large multidiscipline national firms. So we provide a very tailored, specialized level of service and have the resources of a large firm, but the service level of a small boutique type of firm. We have offices in Grand Junction, Denver, Reno, Phoenix, and in Albuquerque. Our team in Albuquerque is the largest airport engineering group in New Mexico. With all of those offices, we serve the western and southwestern United States. We work in 3 different FAA regions with 5 different airport district offices, which provides a lot of broad experience with lessons learned, how different ADOs and different regions are doing things, and things that we can bring to the table to help with all the services that we provide to you. Our team, I mentioned 47 people. There is a key group that works with you on a regular basis. And you have a lot of interaction with the leadership from the company. I am personally involved with a lot of your projects, a lot of your work. You've seen me here several times. I'm a principal in the firm. Mike is a principal in the firm, and he's running and leading our Albuquerque office. He's here on a regular basis. Justin, as our planning manager, is also a principal in the firm, and he's actively involved with Scott on, I'd say, at least a weekly basis, interacting on He's like, yeah. So you do have a lot of high-level involvement with what's going on with your airport. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things we help keep moving forward. But we also have a huge support team, and Brooke is part of that support team as an airport planner. You don't see her face a lot, but you see a lot of her good work and efforts. And as we go down, we have a whole team of engineers in the Albuquerque office, the team of planners, the resident inspectors that come out when the contractors are doing work, and they're on site every day making sure, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
I wanted to interrupt for just a second, Dennis, and give Justin some props, because when we started getting all of these airplanes in, the 500 or so that we have now, one of the first things that we needed to do, and we kind of went through FAA and said, do y'all want us to do this? It's going to be a pain. But they said yes, of course. And Justin put through 80 airspace studies for us so that we could park airplanes on our airport. So, and that didn't cost us a thing. It's just part of what we do because of our relationship with Armstrong. And it came out really good. Everything that we did was accepted by the FAA. We got to park airplanes where we wanted to, but primarily it's really all about the tail heights on those airplanes and how close they are to the runways and taxiways. So
Okay.
I wanted to mention that because that was really a big deal that we worked on for probably, I mean, I know Justin worked on it straight for a couple of days, but really we were doing phone calls on that for a couple of weeks.
I
But
appreciate that.
I just wanted to do that because it was really a big deal and it has been very, very helpful to us.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you pointing that out because that really demonstrates the level of effort that not just Justin, but the whole team puts in. And I think he really exemplifies the way that we try and deliver a very high level of service. We're not perfect in everything that we do, but we really strive for excellence and service and responsiveness. So we have a whole team of people. We have drafters, we have inspectors, we have marketing people that help put together graphics, some of the brochures that have been prepared for you. So we have a whole team that's supporting all of this effort for you. So next slide, please. So how does this relationship work contractually? The mayor mentioned the professional services agreement at the last meeting. The PSA is a standard form of agreement, and it's the foundational contractual relationship that we have with the city. It provides, as you see up here, a project list of eligible projects that we may work on throughout our term of service with you. The PSA itself provides all of the legal framework. It provides for the relationship. It provides the list of services, the term, the responsibilities, insurance, indemnification, termination, use of documents. So the legal framework is put together in the professional services agreement. It also includes all of the required federal clauses for the grants, the FAA grants that you receive. It typically is it's a 4-year term. It can be a 5-year term based on FAA eligibility, but because of state law in New Mexico, we're limited to a 4-year term. So every 4 years, you have to go out for renewal, reselection, reevaluation, but the PSA runs for 4 years. What the PSA does not include are project-specific scopes of service and fees. Those are provided through a task order. So the PSA provides, it's kind of an on-call. So for any of these projects that are done with federal funding or other related projects that may be local funded or state funded can be done under this blanket agreement. On the next slide, actually that's the bullets for what I just mentioned. The next slide talks about the task order. So every project on that list that is undertaken is done under a task order. The task order is project specific. They are sequenced alphabetically, task order A, task order B, C, as we move through the projects over the years. The task order provides the specific scope of services and fees for doing that particular project. If we're doing a taxiway reconstruction project, it will specify the taxiways, what's being done, whether it's a mill and overlay, a full reconstruct, a seal coat and remark, the level of effort that's required, the specifics, the deliverables, and our actual fees for doing the work. And on a design project, that could include preliminary design, final design, geotechnical, survey, bidding, and construction period services, which is a normal design and construction type task order. So every one of those projects requires a fee review. The FAA, the city provides that, the FAA reviews it, and the FAA issues a determination of reasonableness to make sure that the fees that we're charging are fair and reasonable for the level of effort that is anticipated for that particular work. For projects over $100,000, you're actually required to go through a detailed written fee analysis. And that is a grant-eligible expense. Usually they run $3,000 or $4,000. A third firm, a third party, reviews our scope of work, scope of services, without any of our fees, and they develop what they would charge to do the same project. And those fees are compared, and generally if they're within 10% of each other, the FAA says, yep, that looks fair and reasonable, and then we're allowed to proceed with executing the task order and doing the work on that particular project. So there are checks and balances in the system to make sure that you're getting fair and reasonable fees throughout the process. The third contract is really when you go to construction. After the project is bid out, we're not a construction firm, we're an engineering firm. Construction contractors bid using the plans and specifications that we prepare to actually do the construction work. So if you're doing a taxiway project, a prime contractor who may be a paving contractor may go get some sub-consultants that are electrical if we're doing lighting with the project, and they'll put in an actual hard bid to do the work. We like to usually get 2, 3, 4 contractor bids, and the lowest qualified bidder is awarded the construction work in accordance with FAA procurement regulations for the grants. So once the contractor, the low bidder is identified, the city enters into a construction contract with the construction contractor directly. The construction contractor does not work for us. They are under contract with the city to deliver the construction project. In our task order with the city, we have services that are called construction period services. Those include construction administration and construction observation. Formerly, the observation was often called inspection. There's a fine line between inspection and observation. Technically, from a legal aspect, we do not inspect. We observe, record, and report. We are your eyes and ears during the construction project, making sure, yes, sir?
On that, does the FAA come out, like say a runway or a taxiway project, does the FAA have its own inspectors? And then from a state perspective, do you have CID, constructions industry, come down and inspect it? Or how does that work?
So the FAA is involved with, first of all, a review of the plans and specifications. You certify and they concur that your plans and specs are in accordance with their advisory circular regulations. During construction, usually the only time we see the FAA is at the final inspection of the project.
Okay.
Usually that is also the same with the state. CID is not involved with the horizontal construction. They do get involved in vertical construction on buildings, snow removal equipment buildings, aircraft rescue firefighting, the vertical side. They do not get involved in, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
Only if there's electrical and the vertical stuff, not on the airfield itself.
Really? Okay, so
Yeah.
making sure the rebar's right and all that, who falls on that? Who makes, you do? Okay.
That's why we
So
don't-
that's where you're quasi-inspectors more than observers type thing.
Which are then that's a good, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That's the good thing about our inspectors too, is all they inspect are airports. So they know airport work.
Okay.
If you ask them to come look at a curb and gutter, they'd probably be a little like, we're not sure the city specs. And so they're not comfortable out in this world, but you put us on an airport and that's where we know.
Okay.
So if
Thanks.
you're doing electrical, say runway lighting, and there's a trench, and they have to have gravel in the trench, and then they put a conduit and they put cable, our guys are there observing that, making sure that that gets in. We're not inspecting it and making sure there's testing requirement for the compaction of that gravel. But so in a sense, we're not inspecting, but we're observing, making sure that the gravel's in there, the conduit's in there, the cable's in, because they will come back with a pay request for those pay items. And if we haven't verified that the gravel was in there and you're paying for gravel that wasn't placed, first of all, it could fail. And second of all, we want to make sure you're getting what you pay for.
Okay.
So that's our role. We observe, we record, we review the pay requests, and we help process that. Throughout the construction period, we do the final inspection with the FAA. We update your your plans and everything at the end. We close out the project with all your grant paperwork, make sure all the grant is closed out, and then we move on to the next project the next year.
Yeah.
Which we file for you.
Now-
Weekly reports, monthly reports that are required.
This is basically inside defense type stuff, like outside defense, and I'm thinking recently 2 major projects, Xcel Energy did a redo of their whole grid, and of course the water towers we've talked about. You guys were involved in any way on either of those, or?
To some degree, we are on, and there's two fences really. There's the airport property fence,
Right.
and then there's the fence between the air side of the airport and the land side of the airport. We are generally involved in some capacity on everything within the airport property fence. Even if we are not directly involved, say with Xcel with the construction, we may be involved with an airspace review to make sure that whatever is being constructed does not penetrate the sky hangar, for example.
All right,
Great
perfect.
example. We were not involved in any of the design or construction of that facility, but we did facilitate the airspace review to make sure it didn't violate any airspace surfaces, and any environmental clearance that is required on the airport, and any airport layout plan update. So that facility needs to be shown on your airport layout plan. We will do that. We will facilitate your environmental clearance and your airspace clearance. But
Another
we
good
were,
example, Mayor, is when Mr. Najjar, I'm sorry.
I'm old, Mike.
Sir. Another good example is when Mr. Najjar, he did that water line extension out to Sky Hangar,
Yeah,
and we had to go through the runway safety area. We said, whoa, Mr. Najjar. We came down and we told him, here's some requirements. You have to follow these with the FAA. And we showed Mr. Najjar, here's what your design team has to do. Here's some specifications you guys have to meet. So we worked really hand in hand with Mr. Najjar on a lot of that he didn't know. And we actually did. He asked us to do the safety plan for him. We just did it. We said, we understand it. We got it. Just tell us the scope of your work. And we worked with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a good example also I just want to hit on. So you guys come to us with a lot of things that you want to do. Scott and I talk pretty much every week. You come to us with what you want to do. We make sure that the FAA requirements are met. So when you're doing stuff inside the airport, there's requirements that the FAA has. And our job is to do what you all want to do at the airport, but keep you in compliance with FAA requirements.
okay.
and historically, we have not charged additional fees to provide those services. We view that as a level of service that is really a cooperative team effort, because we would rather you come to us and run that through us to make sure you're not creating problems for yourself than us having to try and fix something that you didn't talk to us about ahead of time that would require a lot more time and effort. So we view that as a partnership and a real level of service that we try and provide. So those are things, and we have another slide, we'll talk a little bit about that. So moving on, we can always come back and answer more questions, but there are some key agencies, and you mentioned those twice, Mr. Mayor, that are involved in a lot of your projects. The FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, and the New Mexico Department of Transportation Division of Aviation. So they not only provide grants, but they also provide guiding documents for how these projects are to be done. So your Fort Worth Airport District Office is part of the Southwest region of the FAA. And then DOT Aviation Division is up in actually Albuquerque, even though DOT and the state is located in Santa Fe. Their office is in Albuquerque, right around the corner from our office. We have exceptional working relationships with both agencies, more than a first name basis with these folks, and our credibility is very high. So when we go to them with a request and an ask, they know it's not a pie in the sky thing, that we're not hanging our reputation to try and force through some project for an airport that's a one-time, boondoggle that just really doesn't make sense. When we go and we have a conversation with them and we say, this airport needs this project, they know it's real, we're not making it up. And the level of documents that are delivered for the airspace and the environmental, Justin's team does a very, very good job delivering those. We know what they expect, so when we deliver them, they really get quick turnarounds. I mean, Tim Tandy turns around our environmental categorical exclusions very quickly because he knows that Justin has done his due diligence, they have everything they need, and your projects tend to move forward. Also with the grant closeouts, these guys get graded on opening grants, spending the money, and closing the grant out. So when we do that, you get more money. So that keeps things flowing. If we're not closing grants out for you and you have 4 or 5 open grants, the FAA is very hesitant to give you more money because you're not performing on the grants that you had. So that is another reason that you've been successful in getting funds. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about this, our core services, obviously the planning, engineering, and construction administration, but there's a whole host of other services that we provide. This is the typical sequence that we go through for a project. Project formulation. 2 to 3 years out, we're putting that project on your airport capital improvement plan because the FAA programs spending 3 to 5 years out. The next 2 years are pretty much locked in the FAA. You can't change your projects for the next 2 years. Years 3, 4, and 5 are a little bit more flexible, so we can move things around. So we're doing that 2, 3, 4 years out, lining up your projects. Then follow-up paperwork, the ODO is called an overall development objective, the grant applications, the environmental clearances. Before we even get to developing the specific task order and scope of work, we've done all of that for you. Then when it's the year before your project, so next year's project, we're working on the scope of work and task order for next year's project right now. So we're getting that, Mike is working on that right now. So we're getting next year's project ready to go right now. So we'll be getting the task order in place, getting that executed. Then we're gonna start on the design for next year's projects. As we design through the fall and winter, be ready to bid in the spring, so we open bids early, contractors are hungry, you get good prices. Then as soon as the FAA is ready to issue the grant, and we do all that on our own nickel. Once the FAA is ready to issue the grant and bids are open and you have a construction cost, then the FAA issues the grant for that project. At that point, the money is available to pay for the design services that we've completed up to that point, and you have the money for the upcoming construction. So one thing with the FAA that we've experienced over the last several years, it used to be Congress and the FAA were issuing grants in April, May, maybe June timeframe of the fiscal year. So we were able to get a grant and go to construction that late summer or fall, that fiscal year. Well, Congress, that money, that $3.3 billion that the FAA has, is a balance in their checkbook. So it has seemed that they have wanted to hold on to that balance later and later in the fiscal year, and the grant offers have come later and later, as late as August and September. Once a grant is issued in August or September, depending on your climate, often it is very difficult to get to construction that construction season before the weather turns cold and we have limited paving. So we've had several construction projects slip to spring because of that time frame.
Okay, and I hate to keep interrupting. So fiscal year ends September 30th as opposed to the state. So you get the grant issued by, let's make up a date, September 10th.
Mm-hmm.
You're expected to do something before the 30th, and is there a percentage of that grant that you're supposed to do within the 20 days, or how does that actually? Okay, Mike's, you're scaring me, Mike, when you do that. Don't scare me. I have white hair for a reason. Okay.
So, yes. What happens is when the FAA issues a grant on September 10th, the city is required to execute that grant, typically within a week, and get it back to the FAA so that they can then plug it into their system and have it in place before the end of the month, before the end of the fiscal year.
Those are those things I signed.
Yes. So what we try to do is we anticipate that grant is going to be coming. So whenever possible, we get a draft version of the grant from the FAA. It has all the legalese, and typically we know what the upward end of the dollar amount is going to be. We get to you ahead of time so that you and City Council can approve it, so that when that comes on the 10th, all you have to do is sign it. It doesn't have to go back to City Council.
Gotcha.
You have 4 years to spend that money.
Okay.
And they have preferred percentages of drawdowns in year 1, 2, 3, and 4. Seldom do we ever take 4 years. Usually it's done within the second year.
Yeah.
Because it's a design, bid, construct, closeout. They have a drawdown schedule they like to see, and if you're inactive on your grant for more than 6 months, you'll get a phone call. If you're inactive for more than 12 months, you will go on the naughty list, and it may jeopardize future grants. We don't go there. We make sure that you're constantly active. And an active means some type of a drawdown on the grant.
Okay,
Good question.
thank you.
Okay. I'll let Justin talk a little bit about this. We're almost done. So we'll talk a little bit about those additional client services that Scott and Justin mentioned.
Yeah, so we've kind of already hit on a lot of this, but I just want to emphasize that it's, we're talking to Scott every week. We think of ourselves as an extension of his staff. He calls up and says, hey, we've got somebody who wants to build a hangar, or we want to do this. And we look at it, we pull out the airport layout plan, go through it, see what we need to do. Like we said, we really just want to keep you out of trouble with the FAA. If you don't submit airspace cases for evaluation to make sure that you're not penetrating airspace with development like the Sky Hangar, if you're not submitting a categorical exclusion, which is a fairly simple environmental analysis for each project, you can jeopardize future grant funding. And it doesn't matter if it's FAA project, state project, or private, all these steps have to be followed regardless. So we just want to make sure that you don't get sideways with the FAA and jeopardize any future grant. So, yeah, it's just regular communication that we're constantly going back and forth on. So we have a really good working relationship with Scott on that.
And this is just a small picture of a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that you all don't get to see. You get to see, the city sees task orders, contracts, grant offers. You get to see the pavement on the ground as we're doing construction, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. And, we were talking about earlier, and one thing, and I mean this sincerely, we have a passion for airports. We have a passion for aviation and what we do, and we really view this as a partnership. We are all on the same team working towards the same vision and goals. And if we can work together and we help you be successful and you're successful, then we're more successful. We all do more projects together. The airport advances and the airport's successful, the community's successful. So it really is a partnership and us working together towards the same vision and goals. And on the next slide, this Mike's going to talk a little about this project history. We've been working with you since 2008, and in my opinion, have done some very successful and great projects together.
So over the last 12 years, we've been able to complete a lot of successful projects. A lot of them have been just instrumental in helping the airport grow and succeed. Typically, if you look back going, yeah, I'm sorry, I said typically, sorry. Like Dennis said, these come up on the CIP. These are locked and loaded, and as they come up, we complete them, and as the airport sees and the FAA deem necessary. Some of the littler projects stem from doing a payment maintenance project, whether it's on your taxiways or your runways, but yet those are really important to help keep your 139 certificate valid. That's really, really key. One of the things that, on that last slide, just to touch on is you are a 139 commercial service airport. You guys are a big guy. The thing is, that 139 official, they're really strict. They can shut you down when they come down. If they don't see you being safe, they can pull your certificate that day, suspend everything. They have that much power. One of the things we work with Scott on is making sure that 139 requirements are met. So when it comes to those buildings and even just doing a payment maintenance project, those glass beads, they go out there at night when they come down and they do the reflectometer test to make sure the reflectivity is the right bead that we have specified the correct bead. So it gets down to that detail, but yet it's really important. So looking at the payment maintenance projects and all we're going through, we built the SRE building out there, the big one. That's been great and instrumental to help the staff out there with all their equipment, get it out of the sun and get it out of the elements. So, of course, the pinnacle was the big 321 runway. That was a $20 million project. So, reconstructing the runway, you guys have a gem, and the mayor's gone over that 100 times. And that big runway is it doesn't take a backseat to anybody, and we work throughout the West. So you guys got a nice runway. That's one of our, that's on our walls all over Armstrong and all our offices. So we're really proud of it. And we just love all the stuff that we've done over the past 12 years, and we're really appreciative of working with all of you folks.
Okay.
So on the runway, we're always looking out for your best interest. With the runway project, it'd be one thing to do the reconstruct and all that. But not only that, we went to headquarters at the FAA, not only to help secure the funding, but also to get 2 waivers approved. They're called modifications to standards. If you're not familiar, most commercial service runways have grooves cut in them to shed the water. And also the lights are 10 feet off the edge of the pavement. Because of the flight testing and testing for the manufacturers that you all do, they could not have the runway grooved because it affected their testing. We were able to obtain a modification to standards to allow your runway to remain ungrooved so that you could continue the testing. They also wanted to move your lights in to 10 feet off the pavement edge. We got a modification to standards to keep them out at the 300 feet, at least for now, until their useful life expires, to allow aircraft testing, a little extra margin of safety for turning and those kinds of things. So those are just small things that are not typically part of a project, but that we were able to accomplish in your interest to help you accomplish your vision and mission. So that's the past. That's what we've done. As Mike said, we're very proud and grateful to have been part of all of that. But we're also keeping our eyes on what's going on today and what's going on in the future. I think we missed a slide. Oh, I don't see it in there. Well, there are a whole bunch of things going on. There are probably 8 to 10 different projects that are going right now, from the Taxiway Alpha Juliet project. Let's see what else. We have the hangar projects that are going. We have the teardown that I think is going to be discussed. We have the EDA grant that is going, the Hangar 84 expansion. We have the military airport program projects that are going, which are apron reconstruction projects. The parking lot project that may be transitioned to a hangar expansion apron reconstruction project, depending on how the EDA grant goes. So all of those are still moving forward. We have scopes of work, task orders ready to be executed and move forward with the design. Some of those are pending the decisions of the EDA grant in order to decide which portion of runway is going to be reconstructed based on the outcome of that. As I said, we're also looking forward to next year's projects, which is a drainage study and another apron reconstruction with the military airport program. So all of the projects are not these, I'll call them sexy projects with big buildings and terminals and things like that. Drainage, it's not the prettiest thing to have to work through, but it's fundamental to your airport. You are so flat out there, and if you have things draining the wrong way and water's draining into hangars, that's a problem. So we want to make sure that from the foundation up to all of the vertical stuff, that everything is done well, quality, and that you have something that you can be very proud of and that attracts people to come and keep their planes here. When they have choices to go anywhere in the world and they choose Roswell to park dozens of airplanes, that really says something not only about your facilities, but on how you do business and your ability to work with people and make things happen and move forward. So as I said, we are very grateful to be part of the team and look forward to a lot of exciting things as we keep moving forward.
Commissioner Burris, you want to jump in here?
My turn.
Yep.
All right, let me qualify my statements. My father worked for the FAA. He wrote the FARs. And he was in design, certification. He was an engineer. My God. So, and then I've been in aviation since 1978. At the factory, corporate, and commercial. So I'm old also. It's hard to explain what you do. Did a great job with your presentation, but we do the paperwork and we work as a team. You kind of gloss over these things, and unless you work in aviation, not everybody knows what that means. I have a relationship up the street with the feds, and they trust me. That doesn't happen, okay? It's your jobs are very, very, very difficult. Period. You talk about drainage. This is a thing. This is huge. And it's, we all think, drainage is by the road or is a ditch. By the time you get done with the feds, you want to pull your hair out. because you have to explain it to so many different people in so many different ways. And if you mess up the paperwork, and this one everyone needs to understand, and bless your hearts, if you get sideways with the FAA, your grant money that you've received over the years, you get to pay back. Correct?
Yeah.
If you get sideways and you don't do it properly, they're gonna say, give me my money back.
Right.
Now, so you get to take that home with you tonight when you're thinking about 6 months, 1 year, 2, 5, and 10, right? You're in aviation. 6 months, 1 year, 2, 5, and 10. Constantly, every day, all your projects, all your customers, all your paperwork, and dealing with the federal government. And then it drops down to state and local. Your jobs are huge and so important. And, you know, I just watch. I don't comment a lot. I watch. And I am so impressed with the way you guys take care of business and your level of ownership. Your level of ownership, it means you communicate with everyone to explain to them the importance of what we're getting ready to make a decision on. So you protect the city. You protect Scott. You protect our investments. The grooved runway, and everybody understands that if you get grants, it has to be smooth, because they've had issues in the past, right? They've had airplanes that they slid off the runways, and there was an issue. That's why they made an ordinance or a law. To get a waiver from the people on the other side of the hallway that say, if you're going to certify an airplane, it has to have grooves in it, because I have to test my brakes. I have to test skid. I have to test my computers. There's all kinds of stuff, right? I have to take off with one engine, all kinds of weird things that I need the groove. So the FAA says you have to have a grooved runway to certify for this aircraft. You go across the hall and you go, nah, you know, if you want the money to fix runway, it can't have grooves. Now you have them competing with each other. Whose law is more important? You know, and are you going to shut down an entire industry? Understand, we're always building new airplanes. We always have new technology. We always have to certify things. We always have to test and then tear the airplanes apart. I mean, building a new airplane is huge. Where do I go to do my testing? Well, we can go to Roswell because they have grooves, or we can go overseas. How many groove runways are in North America? 3? How many? Do you remember?
Yeah, actually, it's the ungrooved runways. Most of them are grooved.
Oh, yeah, it's been ungrooved. Yeah,
In
that's
your
what I meant.
case,
Sorry,
it's
I
ungrooved.
I misspoke, yeah.
I think there might be 3.
Yeah.
3?
Maybe 2, 3 at the most.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
they're-
yeah, smooth runway.
Yep.
So, yeah, 3.
Yeah, but not of this length, I don't.
That are
believe.
certificated,
Yeah.
Yeah, so, bless your heart. So thank you very much for what you do. I mean, it is huge, and you go through these presentations, but there's so much backstory, and I'm impressed with your professionalism and how much you actually care. And
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Means a lot.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Commissioner Kunkel.
Dennis, I've got a couple of questions here. One, from a business investment standpoint at the Air Center, we've really got a couple things going out there. We've got aviation and industrial development, you know, with Ascend Aviation coming in, all that kind of stuff. But obviously, because of the COVID and what's going on for possibly the next 4 to 5 years, I don't think any of us know, aircraft storage is going to be a huge part of what goes on out there. And we've already talked about how much money that generates for us, or for the city. From a business perspective, what can RAC do, working with you, to enhance or increase business from a storage standpoint out there? What can we physically do? Are there grants available? Is there enough room to spread more aircraft out? If we're such a good place to do this, should we not maybe attempt to capitalize that on even more? A lot of questions, but what response do you have to that?
Well, what I would say, first of all, years ago when we did the last master plan update, the vision for what this airport would be was really well established. What's going on today has folded right into that vision. The vision was that you would be the premier aerospace industrial park throughout the country because of the assets that you have, the environment, the culture, the quality of life, the cost of living, the potential workforce, all of those things. This airport was ripe for fitting that role. And the dominoes have been put in place to get to that, with the master plan, the wide-body hangar feasibility study, the MRO conferences that you've gone to and getting the word out and starting to attract businesses. With COVID, to the detriment of so many industries, and it's horrible to see how so many industries have been so negatively impacted, especially the hospitality industries, and the people whose lives have been just so impacted through direct effects of the virus, people who have it or loved ones who've had it, or their businesses. For those businesses that have failed, others have risen and skyrocketed. Commercial painter, he said his commercial business was down 50%, but his residential was up 300%. People are sitting around in their houses looking at the walls and say, I need to paint that, I need to do this. Well, your airport is very much in that lines. It was the additional aircraft that have come here because of the grounding has just opened the door for possibilities. So what I would say moving forward is you continue down the path, the vision that you started on, and you keep investing in that vision. Now there's two sides of the house that I see. One is what I'll call the storage and tear down side. The other is the MRO side. So both of those work very well hand in hand. And I don't want to say all of the above because you have other things. You have the military coming in, you have flight testing, you have commercial service, all these other things. But from an economic impact that provides jobs in the communities, those two things, aircraft storage in and of itself provides some jobs. The MRO and the teardown provides even more. So continuing down the path to, with the anchor business, and we've been talking about this, you need that anchor wide body hangar to bring that first business in as the anchor that's planting the seed for other residual businesses. If the Ascent thing, not if, but when the Ascent thing goes through and that hangar is constructed and those services provided, they now need other support businesses. And this is where I think the marketing effort, you have interior shops, avionics shops, other support machine shops, things that complement that business, not necessarily compete with them. You don't necessarily need more direct competition, but supporting businesses. So providing an environment that will attract those types of businesses will keep you going on the economic side. On the other side of that is the aircraft storage, and that's more of a facility and space issue than anything else. Justin did 7460s, we call them airspace case studies for some 76 aircraft that are close proximity to the runway. We have a parking plan for dozens, hundreds of more aircraft.
Yep.
You can get lots more aircraft. Yep. Now the thing on that is infrastructure, and there are ways to do the infrastructure to accommodate those planes without having to build full-blown taxiways, parking pads for the main gear. So us working with Scott on planning the model of aircraft that are going to be parked in certain places and just putting, whether they're steel plates or concrete pads under the main gear, maybe the nose gear, and you provide parking lots for these aircraft where you don't have huge infrastructure investments, but the bare minimum so that if things do come back, you haven't overinvested in infrastructure that's going to cost you a lot of money. So doing it smart and cost effectively, but opening the door to bring these in. So that's my medium short answer, I guess.
And you have those airplanes here right now, which is that's a huge start.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, those airplanes are here. So you already have the start of that opportunity, and it just snowballs from there.
The second part of that is marketing and advertising. And working with you, the MRO conference is a good place, but developing the brochures, working with the website, getting the word out to attract people to come here and bring their businesses here is the second part of that. It's one thing to have a great asset, it's another if nobody knows about it. So getting the word out and building the reputation in the industry, which I think you are doing because people are calling you and coming here. So continuing on that momentum that you have, I say is the way to go.
One other question. You talked about inspection and observation, okay? And you guys aren't inspectors. So if you've got a contractor that has done something that's not per FAA standards, what kind of a hammer, other than you don't pay them, do you really have to get something fixed while it's occurring?
And I will, I'll defer to Mike on that, and he can talk through some of the specifics, but there are some things that we can definitely do. And there's quality assurance testing and acceptance testing that goes on that the contractor is also required to fulfill. But
Commissioner, to answer your question, yes, if we do, or we're out there, first and foremost, I want to make sure everybody understands, not any contractor can come in and work on an airport. They have to be licensed to work on an airport. They go to the state, they take the test, and you get your license to work specifically on airports. So there's not a lot, to be quite honest with you, in our state. There's maybe 4 or 5 that I remember right offhand. I don't think, it's not like doing streets and highways. There's a lot of those kind of contractors around, but for airports, we're a specialized group. We really, really are. So to get that, first of all, there's not a lot of contractors, so they know the rules. We work with them throughout the state and sometimes throughout the Southwest. So when they come into our state and they work on an airport and we see them doing something that is not per specification, which is honestly isn't a lot. It really doesn't happen that very much. But if we do, we say, hey, we need to, per the specification. We sit down with them, we talk to them, and a lot of times there's just an oversight, to be quite honest with you. Nobody's really tried to do anything, like somebody had said in here, airports, planes come in at 150 miles an hour to land. Everybody takes that pretty serious. And at our pre-construction meetings, we emphasize that, we know we are all here. Let's not get lackadaisical on our construction. And let everybody know we're working on an airport. Let's do this right. So everybody understands the severity of what we do. And it is complex, and it can be, absolutely. It's a health and safety type of environment. So everybody takes their job pretty serious, even the contractors. And we have a good reputation with contractors. We work well with them. Everybody, when we get on an airport, if we do see something, we bring it up, say, hey, let's check this again. Let's test that one more time, and we'll do it. No, there's usually never problems. I'll be honest, we've been able to work through a lot of our problems without having to do anything. If we get into anything, we just call the FAA and say, hey, we want to call with you. Let's talk to the FAA engineer up there about this. And if the contractor wants a little bit more clarity, we don't hesitate. Like I said, our relationship with the ADO is really great. All the engineers, we know, I've got all their cell phones to their house, to be quite honest with you. We can call them anytime. I can say, hey, whether it's a Gene or Britain, we can call them and say, hey, just for the contract, we just all want to make sure the specification, this is our interpretation. We just want everybody to be on the same page, and we go from there. So honestly, Bud, we don't have a lot of problems like that, to be quite honest with you. And if we do, we just bring the FAA in, we clarify it, and we move on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner? No.
I'm curious to know how much the city pays for this contract annually.
We pay for
How much the city
the,
pays for the PSA.
So there's 2 answers to that. Nothing is the first answer. And then second is it depends on the project. So they're gonna go through and they'll look at all the line items that they need to do for a particular project. They'll put prices on it, they'll send it to me, I'll look at it and go, looks pretty good. And then I'm required, if it's over $100,000, to go and get a second opinion of another engineering company. They don't get to see those prices, they only get to see the scope of the work. And then they go and they look and they say, okay, these are the industry standard prices, and put those on there, and they cannot be more than 10% off. If these guys are too high, then they've got to take a look at it and figure out what to do. But it really depends a lot. Mike or Dennis can probably talk a little bit more about percentage of the project, but It depends a lot on what the project is and what the scope of their services is. It is.
Yeah. There is no fee and no retainer for our PSA. That is just executed. That is a 5-year standard form of agreement. Each project that we do, we develop a scope of work and a specific fee. If it is a federally funded project by the FAA, not only does our fee is eligible for grant funds, but the construction is. The FAA pays 93.75% of the total costs of the project. The state kicks in half of that, so the city's paying like 3.75%, 3.75 cents on the dollar of the total project cost, including our fees. If it is a state-only funded project, typically it's 90-10. The state pays 90% and you pay 10%. If it is a local-only project, then you pay 100% of the cost.
Okay. Right. Commissioner Armstrong, anything? I actually have a few other things I wanted to explore with you a little bit. The Hangar 84 doghouse, and I need to send you guys the email I got from Gene Gamara, because I did a request, and I'll get you a copy of this. Or did I already send that to you guys?
So you gave
We
it to
have-
me last meeting, and I gave it to everybody.
Okay, where I asked for the $2 million from the parking lot to go to that, and we got the response we all expected to get. And then I responded to him, basically, no, you can't. We can't redirect. I'm still hopeful we can pursue that, and I understand that at that level, the answer is no, but I asked to have who would I go to appeal. I want to pursue that, but I don't want to pursue that too quickly because I want to see what happens with the Economic Development Administration, $3 million. If we don't get that, then I think a lot of this just gets a lot more murky. But if we do get the $3 million, then the $2 million map gets more critical. And I want everyone here to kind of understand what I'm thinking about this. So let you guys know where I'm at with that. Next question I had or thought I wanted to chat with you a little bit about is the Jen Air doghouse. Were you guys involved with that at all, the doghouse?
No.
Not even to make sure it complies with the...
Well, did we do, we may have done a 7460. I suspect on the airspace we did.
Okay, and then, so who's they have a contractor yet for that?
Yeah, it's custom construction.
Okay. And Custom did Sky Hangar, right?
Yes.
Okay. So they know a little bit about. They know about. All right, that's what I was curious about that one. The large hangar project, which is bubbling out there. Right now, if I'm looked at the maps correctly, there's some water lines and some sewer lines that are going to have to, we're not going to move them, we're going to abandon them in place, I assume. Now, this is where I'm a little unclear as responsibility. To engineer those new water lines, that's not something that you guys would engineer, is that correct?
We could. We have the capability. It's on airport property.
Right.
And we could, along with our teammates, we work with Wilson Associates on a regular basis. So they often support us on utility designs and things like that. But we have the capability to do that.
Okay.
If you would so, yeah, we just did that.
Las Cruces, the Air Center, the Readiness Center, Tim did all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's,
Water lines, sewer lines, Tim, and the gas line. Tim.
Because in the past, my understanding is the city engineer wants to keep hands-on control of that because it ties into existing systems and that I don't want to presume to speak for the city engineer, but that's where I wanted to make sure I understood where we were at with that. Same type of thing with the power lines. Excel, you guys would work directly with Excel to reroute those power lines.
yes.
And I know this is probably too soon to tell, would we go underground with any of that stuff in that area? Or is it,
Yeah, preferably. Excel already came in and removed a bunch of equipment and lines that were in the area. The other lines, preferably if we could go underground, that would be ideal. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but, it depends on cost as well and budget and
We know
what's
Richard.
able.
We know Richard Padilla really well. I know him really well.
Oh,
I know Richard Padilla really well. I went to school with them, so I
okay.
work
You went
really-
to school with everybody.
I did. I know.
It helps.
I had, man.
It was a very big
Back
class.
what we were talking about.
All
But
right.
I know Rich really good.
And then the other thing I was thinking too is you kind of touched on this with the drainage. So that large hangar project, we got expanded ramp, maybe not. Scott and I have talked about this a little bit. How far out there does the ramp? And then a parking lot, drainage. How do we get the water away from all that? And we don't have storm sewers out there, do we? I didn't think so.
No, we don't. It drains out to Earl Cummings. I'm not sure we really have gotten that far deep into the weeds. It certainly is going to be a consideration that we have to do, and whether we have to put a detention pond or anything
See,
like that out there.
that's what I'm wondering is, and do we put the detention pond across Earl Cummings?
So we have seen the site plan from the applicant.
Right.
Or the prospective applicant, because they have not applied for anything yet. So we've seen the site plan from the tenant on what they are considering constructing. The ramp, like you said, is about 3 or 4 times as large as the initial site plan. The building's a little smaller. They have a big parking lot, all the utilities. They also have 2 wash pads with underground containment systems for that wash water, and whether those are going to be tanks or an oil water separator, then discharged into a storm sewer system, or all of that has to be designed. It's purely conceptual at this point. We've put together a preliminary, very high-level preliminary cost estimate, which differs a little bit from the tenant's cost estimate. We had some questions, but yeah, so all that has to be determined. We have the capability to perform those designs, preferably through the city, contracting with you, and any other funding agency then reimburses you for the cost of those design services.
I think that what we need to do is work with Mr. Najjar.
Yes.
Really close to see what he would like to see as far as the public works side of things too.
Yeah, that's because what I'm thinking here, and this is very rough, and you know I like to pretend I'm still an engineer, is a detention pond, I call it inside Earl Cummings, so that the air side of Earl Cummings is the premium space. You don't want to waste that with a big pit. But do we build something as part of this that also integrates the whole drainage questions? Because you're right, the whole place is flat. And do we do that? And see, this is where the project in some ways gets a little larger than folks originally considered, and then integrating some of the city public works aspects becomes an opportunity for us. And I just wanted to throw that out for, we're not going to solve anything today, but I think
just
it's,
in general, when you talk about retention and detention ponds, a lot of things, it all comes back down to soils and the perk rates and and again, what Mr. Najjar would like to see happen, and if it's going to affect anything as far as the city SWIP plan, things like that. So those are things that we would have to work hand in hand with Mr. Najjar on.
okay. And the final thing I'd throw out there is that, and Scott's heard me talk about this or raise this question a lot of times, 58 and 66. What do we really do with them? I mean, they're not used as hangars. I don't think they can really handle any modern aircraft. I don't think it can handle regional jets even. I'm not positive on that. But, they're not being used, and I'm wondering how long the FAA turns a blind eye to it. I don't know.
Well, realistically, the way they look at it is so 58 might be more in question because the doors don't work. So, if we have a proposal where someone comes in and says, okay, we'll fix those doors and we want to use it for an aeronautical purpose, we can't just turn them away. Even though air sail is in there, if we have the opportunity to transform that from a non-aeronautical purpose to an aeronautical purpose, we have to consider it. We don't have to agree to it, but we have to consider it. So 58 is a little less important than 66 since the doors function on 66. Basically, if someone shows up to rent that hangar and says, hey, we want to do this big thing here and our aircraft will fit in that hangar, we have to consider it. And so that's really it's a compliance issue, and that's really where we are right now. as to what will fit in there. We're really limited to smaller corporate aircraft. It's always the tail that's an issue. So even some of the regional jets will not fit. Some of the older, smaller ones, the ERJs, might get in there. But in general, we're looking at stuff with shorter tails, so general aviation aircraft and the smaller Citations and Learjets and that type of thing that have a shorter tail that can roll in there. But realistically, we've had no takers yet. Not to say that we won't. Nobody's crystal ball works well, I don't think.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. You want to?
Oh, I'll just say, in the meantime, the FAA will allow you to do an interim non-aeronautical lease of the buildings for non-aeronautical use. And like Scott said, until and unless you have an aviation demand, but you could continue down that road.
As long as there's no demand for aeronautical. So once that demand appears, then it changes.
I appreciate this. I like this kind of exchange and back and forth, and I'd like to throw out for consideration, not a decision right now, is that repeat this maybe twice a year. Let us hear from you guys, and you hear from this group and the city on stuff like this. And the whole large hangar project is an interesting
Yes.
project. Is that a good word?
Fundamentally, we work for you. We are your consultant, and we want to assist you in any way that you would like for us to do, and whatever that means, with MOAs with other jurisdictions, organizations, agencies, tenants, whatever. We prefer to work through you and provide our services to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. And yeah, it makes it easier. When you say you work for me, you work for Scott, really.
Well,
And
the
everybody
city-
knows I don't
the
have a
city.
vote, except for here. This is exciting for me. I get to vote. Okay, thanks. Anything else for Armstrong? If not, we're going to go have a tag team by Mr. Stark and Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you for allowing us the time today. We really appreciate
We
it.
appreciate you guys, yeah.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. So just a quick update on the city's request to the FAA regarding the old municipal airport property. We've been working on this for quite some time. We're actually a little bit over a year since we made our trip down to Austin and presented the official letter. One of the big pieces, the final pieces that they have requested was an appraisal of the property. I just received the appraisal yesterday. So I will be reviewing that, and we'll be submitting it to the FAA along with our letter requesting that this appraisal be accepted as the final piece of information they needed to be able to proceed forward with the release of the property to the city, as indicated by that resolution, Resolution 1292 back in the day when it was adopted. So that's where we're at right now. It's, this was the last piece of information they requested, and now that we have it, I think I'm hopeful that we can maybe proceed forward. Again, we're dealing with the FAA, so that, soon may mean a couple of months, but I know we're getting there. And Scott, any additional information?
No. At this point, I don't have anything additional. That was what they were waiting on. FAA right now was waiting on this appraisal report. So I think.
Oh, you broke it.
That's what I get for holding on to it. We'll see if we can move forward with that. Once they have a chance to look at it, then they'll get back with us and let us know what they think about their decision. But the last discussion that we had, it seemed like this was basically going to fill a box, and we were almost done.
Just to kind of review us a little bit here, the premise is that the Air Center, when we moved from the old municipal to the current Walker Air Force Base, because we had received grants from the FAA in the 50s and 40s, they were interconnected. In other words, revenue or sale of property at the old municipal went into the airport enterprise fund, and we couldn't use them. Now we could, on the reverse, we used the airport enterprise fund to demolish the old terminal, if I remember right.
Correct.
And so this is to say we've satisfied all those previous grant we've received. We, the city, have made up for all that, and now we get to release that from any further FAA oversight.
Correct. And so that's what it'll mean, is basically that in the end, there'll be no obligation, if they agree to it, to repay any other funds to the airport fund from the general fund. So any proceeds that come into the city on sale of property or lease of property or anything of that nature from this old municipal airport would be fully up to the city to do whatever they want.
Okay. Questions? Councilor, commissioners? Nothing goes quick with the feds, I know.
No, but again, with this information, hopeful that we'll be able to get a release. We do have some plans for that property, so we'll be there. And again, as you indicated, Mayor, I think with all of the contribution the city has done over the years, we have more than satisfied that requirement specified in the resolution. So this is just another formal process that we have to meet with FAA.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Unless there's anything else, we'll go on to item number 10. Crunch pad.
And Mike Garcia, I'm going to call on you to come up here and tag team with me. So I apologize, I'm not near as far along as I would have liked to have been. It's been a crazy month, and basically, what we've done is we've talked a lot about what that teardown pad looks like, basically dovetailing off of what we all talked about last month when we were looking at the concave versus the trenches on the side for catching anything that spills and runoff and that sort of thing. So really what we've come down to, I think, was where we left off before, was that the concave idea was probably the best. So we're still looking at tying down some of those details on the scope. So Dennis did, and the Armstrong bunch did ran some numbers for us, and I'll share those with you. So we coordinated with Airsail and to look and make sure we were meeting their needs and not building something too small or extremely large, larger than that we needed to build. And what they would request would be a 250 by 300 foot pad. So going with the concave pad, the estimates vary, quite a bit, from about 1.1 million to 1.4 million. Where you're starting with the 10-inch concrete without any base course, that's the 1.1, the cheapest that we're doing, and ending up with a 12-inch concrete pad with a base course at 1.3, almost 1.4. And then in between, of course, is a 10-inch with the base and a 12-inch without the base. So those are kind of the options that we have as far as designing the thing. As far as the time frame goes, really, we can run two things in parallel. We can get the design done and get that spec'd out and get that out to bid and get the bid going. And then, so there's two pieces to it that I see. There's that piece where we get the design done, we go to bid, we get the bids back, we pick, we run that through legal and council to get the award approved, and at the same time, we're also doing the budget adjustment that has to also go through legal and council for approval. And then the other piece of that is the state grant, which I'm working on. They're asking me some more questions, and they haven't given me an answer yet on whether we're going to be approved for that state grant. But if you remember right, that was a $750,000 grant with us having a 10% match, so it would be $675 from the state, and we would do the rest. So I brought Mike up in case you got any technical questions.
Okay. So how quickly could we go out with an RFP? I guess is the bottom line to me.
And there's another, I think we can do that pretty quick. If you guys have got the stuff about ready, we've got to sign the task order and do all of those things like we normally would with these guys, and that can be pretty quickly. I know they've been working on some of this already, so I don't think we're too far off on getting specs back. As soon as we get that, we can turn that over into a bid, and I would think we would need to have it open 2 weeks to a month at the longest. But you were mentioning too on some of the ground stuff that there was a time frame that was on that, an ASTM number. Go ahead.
So, yeah, if we, Armstrong is, requested by the city to go ahead and design the pad, there are a few things, again, we talked about on the last meeting, that have to happen. We survey it, so we know what the earthwork is doing and what our cut and balances are. And then we would perform a geotechnical report. And again, we answered that question Mr. Armstrong had last meeting about the necessity for that. Just so everybody knows, there is an ASTM. When we do a geotechnical report, there is an ASTM test. And when they do your testing for the soils, it takes 30 days. So that report, no matter what we do, that report we won't get till 30 days. Doesn't mean we're going to wait for it to start it. We can actually get the specs rolling. We can get it pretty well designed. We just got to verify it with the geotechnical report. So just so everybody's clear that geotechnical report, there's a test that takes 30 days. Now it's up to the engineer, the soils engineer that gets us the report to get that to us. And, we will push him as far as we can and say, hey, we really need this. So, for me to tell you guys a specific date, it's really hard. We will push as hard as we can because we know the importance of this project. So, but I just want to make sure everybody's understanding that there's an ASTM test that takes 30 days in that soil. So nobody makes that up but the ASTM. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear about that.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Commissioner Kunkel?
So the actual completion of construction for this thing, there's no way it's going to happen until next year.
No, I don't think there's any way it can happen by the end of the year.
Okay. So, and the only thing that impacts really is air sale, is that correct?
Correct.
So air sale just needs to continue doing what they're doing, where they're doing it, even though we don't like it, because we want to clean it off. So let's do it and do it properly.
Yep.
The only other question that I would have, 250 by 300, and they've said that's what they want, but if all we're going to get out of the state is, what, 675
Yeah.
to do this?
Yeah.
And if the cheapest thing we can do is 1.1, which we don't really know that for sure because we don't have bids, that's still a pretty big chunk out of the city coffers to do that.
Correct.
So is there any benefit to going back to air sale and saying, here's where we are, air sale, you want to put some money into this? I mean, can we do that?
You can always ask. Worst they can tell you is no.
Well, I think that's prudent business. And if they don't, or is there a way to possibly get them what they want, reduce the size somewhat? Just anything that we can do to reduce some of the cost to the city to do this.
Sure.
So just a suggestion.
We can look into those things. And one thing that we intend to do is whatever the city's not spending, we're not going to charge back on the lease what the state gives us. But all the rest of it, we're going to amortize that out over a long-term lease with air sales. So we'll get our money back at some point. So in the long run, it costs us nothing, but it's a matter of how quick you want to get that back and what seems fair and what air sale will agree to. And honestly, that's the reason I haven't given them a number yet, because we're still tossing these numbers around ourselves. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to say, well, this is what we think, and start negotiating over a number that's not real. So I haven't done that yet, and that's why.
Okay.
But
It just seems like, since we're in the middle of October already, we got to pick a date and get them into the office and say, here's what we got. What can you help us with?
And that was also going to be something that Mike and I have talked about and feel like we probably need to kind of crunch all of that and sharpen the pencil and go through that stuff and really sit down with them. So, I need these guys there, because if they tell me they want something different, I can't come up with that number myself. I've got to have these guys on board. So that is something we need to do, and we need to do quickly. But I think we're close with this in terms of at least having a better than rough order of magnitude number, I think. And then when we get a bid going, our anticipation is that it would be lower, but bids are bids, you never know. It may be the same, it may be higher. Really depends a lot on price of concrete more than anything, and then past that, what contractors want to do. If they're hungry, they may come a little bit lower.
Last thing, I guess, I would encourage you and Armstrong to set a date and come back the next meeting and say, here's what we're going to do.
I was going to ask that you have the RFP out
Yes,
by November 19th.
We can. We can do that.
Okay. That was going to be my request.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
I apologize, can you clarify RFP? To us, it means
The,
something different.
the bid.
You actually mean go out to bid?
Yeah. Request, when I call RFP, I mean, we're asking them to submit bids
So today is October 15th. We can have
November
a,
19th is
we-
the next
we
date.
can, we can have a preliminary set of plans and specs in about 2 to 3 weeks after our task order is signed. We can have the final bid package ready to go out to bid probably 2 weeks after the geotechnical report is submitted to us.
Okay.
The geotech takes 30 days to run the test, probably another week to get the report from them. So if we were to issue that today, we'd be looking 5 to 6 weeks from, so I don't think we would have a bid package ready by November 19th. I don't
Okay.
think that's possible with the geotech test that's required. Maybe the end of November? Pushing it, but close to that.
Okay.
But we can have everything teed up. You'll see the preliminary plans if we get the task order signed at the next meeting, and we can have all that lined out. What we won't have is the required plans.
And I'm thinking, we got procurement needs to be in the middle of that, and that's, they've worked for you, right, Mr. Fuentes?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so you want to work closely with Mr. Fuentes on this so that we can get that procurement package put together. All right,
We'll
Commissioner
work
Arm.
with,
Mike, you might mention, I don't think everybody knows what ASTM is, and you might mention that. Because that, just explain what that is.
Sir, the ASTM is a standards testing requirement throughout. It's a standardized test for any materials. Engineering and construction use it in all their work. People don't just go pick up sand and say, oh, that's granular, or this is clay, or you actually run tests that are specified through engineering councils, and those are standardized tests. And those are legal tests. So those are really, really super required on basically everything you build. So, Mr. Armstrong, that's a good point. ASTM, it's not like, oh, we don't have to do that test. You do that test, or you're just setting yourself up. In the city's opinion, we're protecting the city by doing it the proper way. You follow all the tests, and if something happens, you can say, hey, we followed all the tests. This is what we got. It's just the proper way to do it.
And going back to Commissioner Kunkel's question about holding a construction company accountable, and I think the term that was used was, what hammer do you have? A lot of people don't understand that there's a bonding issue. Any contractor doesn't want to screw up very often because it does affect their bonding capacity. And the reason why there are rarely issues with a contractor on any job out, particularly an airport job, is that if they lose that bonding capacity to work at an airport, it can severely affect them. In other words, they may believe that they could go from here to Ruidoso and they can't. They can't work at another airport basically because the FAA won't allow it. And the final thing that I want to mention is that the mayor's talked about, well, where's the retention ponds going to go and so forth and all of that. You don't know, and nobody's going to know until the FAA tells you. And I really don't consider any of that as being to me, all of that is minutia that we don't understand and we're not going to understand, and that's what your job is.
Sir.
And so I just want to clarify that, because it is minutia. Until these things are presented to the FAA and they're signed off by them, it doesn't really matter.
Mr. Kunkel, to follow up on your question, we do have some site plans with the pad and aircraft overlaid on those. The size of the pad does give circulation around a Boeing 747 off the wingtip, nose, and tail. That could be reduced down to reduce the cost, but then it might affect either the size of aircraft or how they operate on the pad. We have the same overlay on the existing pad, which is 200 by 200, and basically the nose and tips stick off the pad just a little bit. So, there's a give and take there as to what they might prefer or what they could afford, and how far can we squeeze this down to be the absolute minimum? It's really up to AirSail and what they're willing to pay in a lease, I think, with Scott, and amortizing that cost out.
All right. So we'll get update on this next month, and we'll know where we're at and where we're going. Okay. Next item up is item 11.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, don't go anywhere,
Yeah,
Mike.
don't go anywhere, Mike. Okay, so here's where we get to have a little bit of fun, I think. So this, you guys touched on it a while ago when you talked about expanding our parking area, and we've been talking about this probably now for a month, maybe a little more, because it began to look like we were going to get full. We always predicted it. We didn't know when that would happen. I would not be surprised if we aren't very close to full by the end of the year. Depends on how quick American and United bring in airplanes and how many surprises like Icelandic Air that we got today. We didn't know about those till today. So we still have room to put, I keep using the number 100 and it's not really going down. But quite honestly, as the folks that are working out there in the airport do more of this, they're getting better at compacting those airplanes. So really, we're just getting more efficient, and so we're using the same space that we've been using, but eventually, of course, you can only go so far. And so the question here is to anticipate the need, and that's really the hardest thing to do, because we anticipate there's going to be more airplanes coming, but we also anticipate there's going to be some going out. We're seeing that now. We're just seeing probably 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 airplanes, one coming in for 4 or 5 going out. I mean the other way around. One going out for 4 or 5 coming in. So that mix constantly changes very slowly, and it's certainly possible that that mix would pick up as the airlines begin to pick up later and we are able to create some space, and that could even alleviate the need for expanding the parking space. But in the event that it doesn't, we want to be prepared.
And I'm thinking here, the ones that are being demoed, disassembled, and crunched. That's kind of part of that
It
one
is.
going out for every 4 coming in.
And right now, there's almost no demo happening. But I think it's really because they're so busy working with the airplanes that they have. They're not really doing any demo yet. But Randy mentioned last time he had 6 or 7 that were getting lined up to go. So we'll see those go. And then another piece of it is another, one-off type of deal example where AirSail bought 24 757s, and they'll be cycling those out. So that's why I say I think we'll see that cycle of airplanes exiting the airport, either on a truck or in the air, pick up a little bit over the next few months. And that'll be coupled with those that are going back into service, either as airline or cargo mods. And so it's difficult to anticipate what that expansion might look like. So I think the plan for now, my suggestion would be to pick the area and kind of start doing, like Justin and I have been talking about, start doing some preliminary mapping of what types of aircrafts might go there and what those facilities look like. Because the idea is not to gravel 100 acres so that we cover that all up. They touched on it earlier. But basically to put pathways out there to get the airplanes in, and then maybe have, similar to an RV park. You've got a road in, and then you've got pads going back out where they park. And it would be very similar to that. And of course, those are going to be fixed size, unlike what we have now where we have acres and acres of asphalt. We can use it any way we want, mix and match the airplanes. We're not going to be able to do that when we do this. We're going to have to footprint a wide body and a narrow body and whatever that looks like. And so that's kind of what we're looking at. If you look at your map, on the south side near the teardown pads, there is a triangle of space. Yep, I'll let you spread it out. But there's a triangle of space between the taxiway that goes to the teardown pads and the old closed runway. There you go. There you go. So I'll point it out real quick. So that area is actually very flat. The soil that is there is also very hard. They have towed aircraft across parts of it already without very much compression. So we think that's probably the low-hanging fruit in terms of expanding. I don't know the exact acreage down there, but it's probably 20 to 30 acres. It's not a huge area. But I would think that we would want to start small and see where it goes. I don't want to go out there and expand into 80 or 100 acres and then have all of these pads we built just sitting there empty. So, so that's kind of my game plan at this point, is to plan it out, figure out what we want to do, make sure it's going to work. So we talk to our MROs and make sure it's going to work for them, and then just sit on it, honestly, until we have the demand beginning to occur. Hopefully with enough lead time to make that happen. But that's the difficult part, is calling that, simply because of the inflow and outflow of airplanes.
Okay, questions or comments?
So Scott, when you're talking about pads, you're talking about pouring concrete out there to put the wheels on.
No, I'm thinking more along the lines of possibly an engineered base mix, a mix maybe of asphalt millings and crushed concrete. The crushed concrete that we're using out there for patching is working really, really well. So we're kind of experimenting with those materials to see what work well, but when we get a rut or anything like that, we're backfilling with that crushed concrete, and it's hardening up just like poured concrete. It's very, very durable. So that's kind of the idea at this point, is to engineer something that'll be good and solid. We may want to go in and roll it first to compact it, that type of thing, but those are ideas we need to kind of toss around and measure that off with the cost and see how it goes. Because in the long run, we're paying for this by the expanded parking, the airplanes that are going there. So we want to make sure that we're not going into this upside down. It would be better off not to do it than to go into it upside down.
And that was part of my question. I mean, you said, okay, let's have this in place if demand occurs, but is there not a mechanism to actively market to generate demand to get more aircraft out there?
And I think we're going to do that either way, honestly. Either way, whether we build any of this or we don't. But it really comes down to that influx and, the planes coming in, planes going out. If we're going to market anyway, because we see how this is working, it's working really well. Up until we started using all of this old asphalt in earnest like we are now, it was anybody's guess whether it was going to work. We thought it would, and we have been more right than wrong. So, no, I think the marketing is a big piece of it. We need to market it either way, to continually use what we have, even if we don't expand.
Okay. Anything else? I'd like to see us come back next month with the preliminary plan, which means Armstrong gets stuck doing a preliminary
Means
plan.
Justin knows that he's got to draw now.
Yeah.
So we've talked about it, but.
Okay.
But we haven't started doing any of that drawing yet, but that, we were anticipating doing that.
Okay. All right. So we're now on to item number 12, which is discussing potential agenda items. And what I've on my list is come back to this very topic with a plan, stay on the Crunch Pad project, update on that. The Hangar 84 project, the whole funding thing, hopefully by then we will know exactly where whether EDA came through with the money for us, and we can go where we go to next with that. Maybe even a little more detailed as to what we think we need to do with Hangar 84. And where I'm going with this is fire suppression, question mark, everybody's favorite topic. So maybe a little more in-depth on the Hangar 84. Maybe a quickie, Scott, you could give us an update if there's any change on the old municipal airport thing. Probably not, but if there is, just incorporate it into your report. And those are my thoughts. Other thoughts, commissioners? Anything else you think want to?
A thought on that. I have a question, so you
Hit
can
me.
go ahead.
No, anybody else want to add anything else? Nope. All right.
Custom construction, do they have a maintenance agreement or contract with the city?
It's my understanding they do.
Pardon?
It's my understanding they do.
Okay, do they have the same thing? Is that integrated not only within the city, but out at the airport as well?
Yes.
Okay, so you don't have to go out to bid on some items because they are able to come in and do the work under that maintenance contract, is that correct?
I'm not sure where they're limited on construction. It's primarily, if I remember right, part of the safe and clean project.
Clean and safe,
Yeah,
yeah,
that one.
that one. I think though, what my thinking is, and it's just mine, is we go out to bid, it's not as quick, but it may be cheaper.
Well, when somebody goes and they bid on these maintenance contracts, it's usually a pretty good thing, as an example, when the city needs concrete, they have a contract with a vendor and so forth, and I just know that they do a lot of work, but I didn't know how much of that work they actually have to bid on, and I'm assuming that if it's over a certain price area, that it probably does need to go out to bid.
So I'm not real sure about what, on the city side, with the streets and all of that, what triggers that. But our maintenance contract for the streets is with Abraham. And so we do have that. And Lewis and Hard did get a quote from them for I think it wasn't this big a pad. It was, I think, 200 and maybe 250 by 250, but don't quote me because I don't remember exactly. But it came out to about 1.4. And his recommendation as well was you can probably get it for much less than that by bidding it.
Right.
He thought even as low as about 650. I don't know if we would be that lucky, but that's a big difference.
Right. Okay. I just wanted some clarification on that because I didn't know if you were able to use. It seems like they're always doing a lot of work out there, and I didn't know if it was through the airport or with the city and how they were able to do that.
Yeah, and we can, since this is not an FAA project, we don't have to go through federal procurement. We would just have to be compliant with state procurement. So there are CES options and that sort of thing as well that we could do. We could pick a CES contractor, but I don't think you're going to see, and it wouldn't hurt to ask. I mean, we can get the quotes, but I don't think you're going to see the prices much different than what Abraham quoted and what Armstrong has come up with. They all seem to be lining up very well.
But the FAA still has to sign off on it, don't they?
So really, it's got to go on our ALP, which is what Justin will be doing. They're not going to sign off on the existence of this because they're not funding it. It really comes down to us playing by our own rules, and they have to sign off on the airspace study. So that'll process through several of their different divisions, and we'll get that because you have to do that for all construction. They have to sign off on the CADEX, which we already have, so we've already done that part. That's the categorical exclusion for the environmental. So we already have that, but the construction itself does not have to be signed off in this case because it's not funded by FAA.
All right. I've got any reports, nothing we haven't covered yet on our agenda?
I was trying to remember, did I mention the Navy?
I don't think you did.
Okay, I'm mentioning them now.
Yeah.
So the Navy has announced that they will be here January 30th through April 16th. I don't know if Kevin has any more information than that. We're meeting with them this afternoon to start going over advanced plans. But their plans are at this point to bring in 25 airplanes, around 150 people, the same routine that we see whenever they come to do their training with the Texan 2. So they'll be here en masse for the spring.
They could fit into 58 or 66, right?
They could.
So if they wanted to come here permanently, we could.
I wish we could talk them into it.
All right, just thinking. All right, any public participation? Anybody else? Have flight? Nope. Okay. I've mentioned some things I think we should throw on the agenda. If you guys come up with anything else, just feed it to Scott. We'll go ahead and put more things on. Otherwise, next meeting is November 19th, and I've got 11:47, so we're adjourned.